This is where the movers and shakers of Kansas come to talk about life and lessons learned along the way. Our guest this week is journalist, author, cook, and musician Joe Stumpe. Joe's day job is editor of the popular newspaper Active Age. This monthly publication keeps Kansas seniors informed about important issues and entertains with interesting feature stories about older Kansans. Stumpe has also recently written a book. It's titled Iconic Eats of Wichita. It features stories about popular Wichita restaurants and includes some of their best recipes. And on top of that all, Joe is a singer-songwriter known for his live performances as well as studio recordings. He'll perform for us here in the studio in just a moment, but first we'll sit down and talk for a while as I go one-on-one with master of word and music, Joe Stumpe. Hello and thanks for joining us. I'm Victor Hogstrom. I'm pleased to welcome journalist, author, musician, cook, Joe Stumpe to the program. Joe, we have a lot to talk about. Cook, musician, journalist, etc., etc. But you were a political and crime reporter in Arkansas before deciding to come to Wichita to report on food.
Yes, that's correct. I specialized down there in writing about what we used to call politics, crime, and everything in between. I covered Bill Clinton's last governor's race and first presidential race from Little Rock and all the controversies that followed. And I, at the end of that period, I was sort of, even though it's an interesting job, kind of burned down on it, looking for something different.
So you became an author in Wichita, am I correct? And
yes.
When did you begin the music part of your life?
I've played music since I was a pretty young kid and been performing for, I guess, around 30 years.
30 years. And then the cooking part?
Cooking since maybe my late 20s, early 30s. I finally figured out I could probably eat better at home than I could out in a restaurant and certainly save some money.
So then what led you to start preparing or writing recipes and cookbooks and publishing books?
Right. Well, that stemmed from my years. I spent about a decade as the Wichita Eagle's food editor, and during that time I collected a whole lot of recipes from people around Wichita, both professional cooks and really good home cooks. And I just felt like I was sitting on this treasure trove of good recipes that I wanted to get out to the community.
Now, you've heard the story that people don't give the complete recipe sometimes. They leave something out. Have you experienced that?
I think it's probably happened once or twice, but I do, usually when I write about something almost all the time, I make it. And if it's really off base, I probably can figure it out on my own.
So now you are head of the Active Age newspaper.
Yes, that's correct.
Leaving the regular daily newspaper in Wichita, the Wichita Eagle.
Yes.
How do you find that gig?
I really enjoy it. It's a slower pace than working for a daily newspaper, but it's plenty challenging. We're doing our best to put out a good publication. We have a large, loyal readership. The paper's been around a long time. I'm just trying to keep it going and hopefully make it better if possible.
Now tell us about your books you've written. The first one, it's titled Iconic Eats of Wichita. Iconic Eats of Wichita.
Right, now that is actually my second book.
Oh, your second.
My first book was Wicked Wichita.
Wicked Wichita, that's correct.
Right.
I reversed them.
Right, so Wicked Wichita is, I would call it a true crime book covering about the city's first 50 years, and the first 50 years of Wichita were pretty wild. It was a frontier town. There wasn't much in the way of law and order, and it was full of great stories. And as I mentioned, I was an old crime reporter, and a lot of the stories actually are a blend of politics and crime because there was also a lot of political corruption back then. And so that's how I got onto that book and published that, or had it published in 2018.
But how did you get into that kind of book writing with that genre of book, that crimes in Wichita. When you had been removed from crime reporting, you were now cooking and reporting on foods and playing music and enjoying life in a way.
Right. Well, I'm a big history reader, and so through the years, I'd read, I think, about every local history book published in Wichita, and I'd seen references here and there to certain criminal figures or controversial political figures from the past. And I just sort of, something I'm interested in. For some reason, I kind of like the shady side of town, and I started doing research and found what I thought were just some extremely colorful characters.
So from Wicked Wichita, you went into the second book, which is Iconic Eats of Wichita.
Right.
Tell us about that one.
Okay, well, that book contains about 175 recipes. They're not my recipes, they're ones I collected from other folks around town. And then again, to bring in the history angle, each recipe is accompanied by a short story about the person or restaurant where the recipe comes from. And I've also grouped a lot of them into some chapters about what I think are the significant aspects of Wichita's food scene. And chiefly that's its incredible ethnic food scene. I think we have some of the most amazing Vietnamese, Lebanese, and Mexican food you'd find anywhere in the United States, certainly for a city this size.
Have you sampled a lot of them?
As much as I possibly can.
Do you cook any of them?
Yes.
What's your favorite?
To cook?
Yeah.
I really like cooking Vietnamese food. It's something I wasn't exposed to until I was probably in my mid-30s. The ingredients are pretty exotic if you're just a kid like me who grew up in the Midwest. And but it's delicious food. It's beautiful. It's relatively healthy, and it's really not that hard to cook.
So you've been cooking, you've been writing and reporting.
Yes.
And you got into music. How have you been able to combine all of the three careers in one?
Well, I think they're not really careers. My career is as a writer, and I have a few other hobbies that
So singing is a hobby.
Yeah, singing's a hobby.
Cooking is a hobby.
Teaching classes, cooking classes is a hobby.
And teaching,
And writing books is a hobby.
And writing, okay.
Yeah. So, I guess I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket.
You are not sure what you wanted to be when you grew up.
That's
is that
right.
what it is?
That's exactly it. Yeah, I'll figure it out one of these days.
So then you got started in the music business, and you perform in nightclubs and various places.
Right, restaurants and nightclubs.
And restaurants, yeah. What kinds of songs do you perform?
Well, whether I'm playing by myself or with my band, probably 75% of what we perform is songs by other people, what they call cover songs, and we do a lot of rock and roll, some country, blues, and jazz. But I also write my own music, and we do some of that.
Now, there's another player in town called Jim McCann. You know that guy?
I know that guy.
Have you played with him?
I have played with him. Yeah. He's a little more experienced than I am, though.
He is? He's a one-man band.
He is a one-man band.
And
very good.
And you only play the guitar?
I play a few other instruments.
And you sing?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And you will be performing on this show later on.
Yes, I'm going to do a song called Let's Go Fishing.
Let's Go Fishing. Did you write that?
I did.
Okay. I look forward to hearing it. So Joe, tell us, what is your assessment, being a former journalist? Well, you're not a former journalist, you still publish a newspaper. So being a journalist, a former crime reporter and political reporter, what is your assessment of the current state of American journalism today?
Well, it has some good aspects to it. There's a lot of talented, smart people in it. I think there's been some mistakes made on both ends of the spectrum of it. Unfortunately, I think it's become very, to some extent, politicized, journalism has. And I'm kind of an old school journalist. When I went to journalism school, we were taught to try to remain as objective as possible, and that's always stuck with me. Mm-hmm. And I feel like when you lose that, you do lose some credibility. But there's still plenty of good journalism being done right here, like in Wichita, the Wichita Eagle, and plenty of good journalists out there.
Do you think today's journalists really keep credibility, believability, trust in high regard?
Well, I don't think it's just valued quite as much as it as it might have been in the past.
Okay. And why is that?
I think because a lot, like other parts of society, we've become very siloed or fragmented and kind of in our own neighborhood. And I think the real role of journalists is to cross that and not take sides. Not that you can't have an opinion, but you got to try to tell the whole story.
Right.
Balance things, in my
Both
opinion.
sides. Like we do on public television, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
But your wife is also a journalist.
Yes, she is. Very good one.
And her name is Carrie. People who don't know her could not associate you with her. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but she doesn't bear your last name.
No.
Her name is Carrie, is it Ranger?
Rangers.
Rangers.
Right.
Right.
Yes, she is a very good journalist, and there's not too many people that don't know her in this town. And I think a lot of people do know that we're married. And, you know, she's got everybody on her Rolodex, and she's very good at turning up the latest news.
Oh, she breaks news.
She breaks news, a lot of news. I should mention too that she's been my editor on both my books and volunteers to edit The Active Age.
Okay. So how did you all get together? How did you meet?
We met in Little Rock working for the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. It's the statewide newspaper in Arkansas.
And did you move here together?
She followed me up here about 3 years afterwards.
So along with the newspaper stories, Joe, and books, you also write songs and you sing them. What's the extent of your musical career?
Extend my musical career. Well, my wife would say that I gig incessantly. I will take about any gig that comes along. During the summer, I probably might play 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, and it slows down during the winter. And you know, I enjoy it. I love my fellow musicians I play with, like to have fun with the crowd, and you know, to me it's something that comes fairly natural. It's not, I don't really have to work too hard at it.
Right. And you enjoy it?
I enjoy it very much.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so talking about your performance, let's have you do a song for us.
Well, this song was inspired by my brother. He is a big fisherman. It's called Let's Go Fishing. And I kind of wrote it from his point of view, using fishing to woo a prospective girlfriend. And I will say that this song is my one and only bestseller. That's in quote marks. What happened was I recorded it a few years and put it on a streaming service. And a few years after that, I started receiving royalty checks every month in the mail. And it's kept up. I usually get about $25 to $75 a month, sometimes a little more. And I couldn't figure out where this was coming from until a friend of mine did a little research on the streaming service, and she found out that people were downloading it to put behind their fishing videos. And so every time they and this is people everywhere, like Australia, South America, Europe, every time they download it, I get half a penny. So it makes me happy. You know, if I make $25, that means I guess several hundred people have downloaded my song and listened to it.
Right.
That makes me happy.
Okay. So we hear the song now.
Let's go fishing, let's make a date. I got the pole, you got the bait. It's so pretty, I'd sure hate to waste this time. We'll find us a shady little spot, not too cool, not too hot, and kick on back to feel a tug on the line. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, just a whole lot of fishing, me and you. No one to see, nothing to say. We won't stop till we ain't done nothing all day. Let's go fishing, let's make a date. I got the bobber and the weight. You're so pretty, I'd sure hate to miss this chance. We'll find us a shady little spot, not too cool, not too hot. Perfect for a little fishing and romance. Perfect for a little fishing and romance.
Joe, that was marvelous.
Thank you.
And what is it that you enjoy most about being a singer-songwriter?
Well, there's not too much I don't enjoy other than hauling the equipment around. It's a way of expressing yourself, whether it's your song or a great song somebody else has written. As I mentioned, it's something I don't have to work too hard at. I can just sit back and enjoy it. And I've just always loved music.
So on this program, we play a little game with our guests.
Okay.
I tend to think that I'm the psychiatrist, and we're sitting on this couch, and then I ask you some questions, and because it helps the audience understand you more.
Okay.
Or better.
All right.
So here's the first one. Tell me the first thing that comes to mind when I say these words to you.
Okay.
The first word is food.
Food. Right now, pho. It's a Vietnamese dish.
Okay.
I think I'm hungry for it today.
You had been wondering what the heck was that. Okay. I understand. Thank you. Politics.
Politics. Bill Clinton. He's the best politician I ever met.
Oh. Art.
Art. Van Gogh.
Religion.
Catholicism. I was raised Catholic.
Sports.
Basketball.
Anxiety.
Anxiety. I don't feel too much anxiety. I guess deadline.
Especially in the news business.
Yeah.
Success.
Success. Fame and fortune.
Oh, okay. So what is it you like about Wichita, and how does it differ from Little Rock, where you lived?
Well, what I have come to love about Wichita is its food scene. I think that even a lot of people that live here don't realize just how good as I mentioned, the 3 strains of ethnic food we have here are, in addition to the restaurants serving it, they're a great authentic groceries where you can go buy the food yourself and make it. And then we have a lot of other great styles of food too. That would be one big thing. And then the other thing about Wichita is tell everybody is you can't believe how easy it is to get around here compared to anywhere else I've ever been.
So Joe, what goal that you have yet to be achieved in life?
Well, I'd like to write a novel.
A novel?
Yeah.
About what?
Well, if I knew, I probably would have written it.
But you've thought about it?
Yes. Yeah.
And you want to share that thinking?
Well, ideas popping into my head, and I just got to sit down one of these days and do it.
Okay. Your thoughts, not your thoughts, but your toughest business decision you had to make?
Well, I'm not a businessman per se. I've just always been a journalist.
Well, you run a newspaper now.
Yes, we have made, just this year, we had to, like everybody else, our cost went up a lot. And didn't have to lay anybody off. We have such a tiny staff, but we had to make some cuts and we had to find some money. And we had to think hard about it. When I took that job as editor, I didn't think money was going to be a concern, but it is.
What's the word that best describes Joe Stumpe?
Well, I think I'm kind of fun-loving. My wife would probably say way too fun-loving.
Well, we should say way too fun-loving.
Well, she, probably like me to settle down a little and.
You like partying a lot?
A little bit.
Enjoying yourself, cooking,
Yes.
eating?
Yeah.
Well, that's, cooking and eating are among the greatest joys of life.
I feel that way.
Yes. So tell me this too, though. Your one thing that you like to do in life that you haven't yet done?
Let's see, dunk a basketball.
Joe, that requires some height.
Write that novel. No, there's guys my height that can dunk a basketball.
Is that right?
Yeah. Probably not my age and height. Travel a little bit more. That's probably the main things I can think of.
You've read several books, and you're an author, you are a writer. What would you describe as your biggest missed opportunity?
Oh, biggest opportunity. Well, I would say beginning in college, I didn't take college very seriously. And who knows what path I might have followed had I done that. I went to a really good journalism school, but didn't study very hard. And so that would be one thing. And then I've never been very strategic about my career. You know, I think I stayed in my first job 5 years and like 4 years and 10 years, 10 years. I tend to stay at a long time in places.
You worked for the Wichita Eagle for a while.
Yeah, about 10 years.
About 10 years. And you then decided to head up the
well, they
activist?
decided for me.
Oh, they decided for you.
It was the layoffs in the journalism world. And then I spent about 8 years as a freelance journalist.
Right.
And then took over Active Age.
So what do you think about newspapers today? Where are newspapers headed?
Well, they're hanging on, but I'm extremely troubled about their future because I think they're so important to the country. I think the country is already so ill-informed and misinformed about so much because people are not consuming news. A lot of them just don't appear to be interested in it. And the newspapers are barely staying in business. And it's a shame. And on a personal level, the first thing I do every single morning is get a cup of coffee, go outside, and get my paper newspaper off the lawn. I'm probably like one of 100 left in Wichita, but I don't like reading a paper online. I like it in my hands. So all I can tell you is there's still a lot of good journalists working out there, but the business is really suffering.
In all of your research, what have you found to be your greatest quote?
Oh, from somebody else?
From someone else, yes.
Gosh, I think I got to go back to Bill Clinton.
You love Bill Clinton.
I love Bill Clinton. Don't let the great get in the way of the good.
Ah, okay. And what about your three passions?
My three passions?
Yeah.
Well, obviously my wife, and then I would say probably music and food. Because even though I love to write, writing is hard work. Whereas the other two really aren't.
Well, tell us about your family. You mentioned your wife. Any children?
No children.
No children.
Just some chickens.
Okay. What about your favorite symbol?
Symbol, did you say?
Mm-hmm. Symbol.
Zildjian.
What is that?
That's a musician joke. That's a type of symbol. I don't know. Peace?
The peace symbol?
Yeah.
Why that?
Well, I'm all for peace.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Your favorite songs?
Oh, my favorite songs,
Not
man.
by you, not by yourself.
Right,
but,
right.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Maybe, if I had to name three, maybe Born to Run, Folsom Prison Blues, and I don't know, Like a Rolling Stone.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned Bill Clinton so many times.
Yes.
You've met him. But I would like to know the person that you are most interested in meeting other than Bill Clinton.
Ooh, that's a tough question because I feel like if I met some of these people, like Michael Jordan or Bob Dylan or Bruce Springsteen, I don't think I would have anything to say to them. I'd probably just like be tongue-tied.
I don't believe that.
I think I would.
No.
I do.
You do, really?
Yeah, I do. But,
Why?
But I mean, I'd like to meet Michael Jordan.
The basketball player?
Yeah.
There's another Michael Jordan, you know.
I do, yeah. I do. Yeah. Yeah, the basketball player.
So why that Michael Jordan?
Just watched him play so many games. You know, just a spectacular athlete and the best at what he did that ever will be, in my opinion.
Right. I used to watch him float in the air with the ball.
Yeah.
Which was amazing. So, Joe, tell us for one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Your favorite cause today?
Well, I gotta say that I have become a big advocate for our senior population. And I'll admit that before I took this job, I didn't give it all that much thought, but I feel like they don't get the consideration due to them in a lot of public policy discussions. Mm-hmm. both here locally and on a national level. You know, everything's about the kids and the future, and that's obviously important. But I think that we need to pay some attention to people who've been around a long time, worked, paid their taxes, been good citizens.
Your audience or readers will love you for that.
Well, I believe it.
Yeah. What about your pet peeve?
Pet peeve, I don't like negativism, negativity. I don't really like criticism either, to tell you the truth. Not of myself. I don't ever understand the purpose of criticism. Like if somebody's talking bad about a movie or a restaurant, I often feel like, well, if you can do better, go ahead.
What about constructive criticism?
Well, if it's really constructive, yeah.
Then you like it. You don't seem so sure.
As a writer, you probably know it's hard to take any criticism.
Well, that's true. That's true. But you have to have a thick skin as a writer too.
Yeah.
It's like being a politician, right?
Right. Yes, it is.
Do you aspire to become a politician one day?
No, I do not.
You've already went through the first stage as a writer.
You know, you're right. A lot of politicians got their start as writers.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the most famous of all would be Winston Churchill. And, but nope, not for me.
Okay. Joe Stumpe, writer, cook, journalist, publisher, musician. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure having you.
Yeah, thank you.
And we're so glad you took the time to watch our program. oneonone@kpts.org is our email address. That's if you have a question or comment. Until next time, I'm Victor Hogstrom. Be safe, and I'll see you again soon.